So, please welcome next Mark Bretton, who is head of BPO in Europe for Tata Consultancy Services, and Deborah Kops.
I'll sing the white show. This is called, I think this is called being buttered up. Okay, Mark. The topic is proving value to the top table. What should the SSC leader be doing? And I think it's probably a good idea to start by saying or asking, what is value? And don't give me this better, faster, and cheaper stuff. What is the value that SSCs provide to the corporation? And it sounds like a very ridiculously stupid question. Let's get better and faster and cheaper off the table. What's the value?
I'm not going to give you the trust, and I'm not going to give you the cost savings. I went through that, I think, with the panel yesterday. I think the search here should be what can be done differently, what can be brought by way of enabling an organization, not just to touch the bottom line, but to bring some new ideas for revenue. So let me give you an example. If I'm working in a customer service back office environment, I'm going to get an awful lot of information. I'm going to get a lot of information about how customers behave. I'm going to get a lot of information about those customers that honestly don't pay very well. That has some value in terms of customer strategies, in terms of driving demand, and in terms of managing the customer base. And we've seen some of that with some of our clients.
But I guess the question I would ask, does the C-suite really wake up every morning and think about, that shared services operation is so important? I mean, how many CEOs walk around saying, my legacy is reorganizing and establishing a shared services operation that gives me better data? How many of them really fuss about that?
Few. They fuss when they don't perform. And I think that's the nature of the kind of business that we're in. Okay,
so how does the shared services leader actually communicate that value to the C-suite? Often he's 2 or 3 or 4 or 7 layers down. How does he say, look, I want the right to start to make changes in an organization, knit things together through a GBS structure or whatever kind of BS structure you want to deal with, and start to prove that there's some value inherent in the operation?
So again, in my experience, you learn a lot from the market around you. If I look at a lot of the clients that we've seen, and not just those that we're working with, competition puts your business under pressure, particularly if you're in a regulated environment. So bringing to the table options where you will improve regulatory compliance to license standards, or where you are really driving better customer satisfaction, is one of the key areas that we've seen come through.
But I guess the question is, how do you get to that table? Remember, many shared services operations are down. If they're not in the hull of the corporate ship, they're certainly in the middle. How do you get a C-suite guy who's looking at a shared services operation for silent running, fuss, no muss, and quite frankly, in my mind, shared services is about no fuss, no muss, no noise, no money, no risk, no extra cost, no investment,
no
perhaps
innovation,
no talent,
no transformation.
no innovation, no. So here, shared services operations are really there to do no. How do you prove value when all you're delivering to the organization, hypothetically, is a no? I'm gonna crack you.
You are.
Okay, well then
but
crack
we came
already.
here for that. The
all
audience came here for that.
Okay.
And there is a lot of no in this. I mean, I've been there, all right? I built a shared service business. It was about good performance, no issues, and a lot of cost saving. I don't deny that at all, but the cost saving thing is still very key. People are expecting to see the bottom line delivered. They're expecting to see the performance to be delivered. But the shared services entities and the customers that we're working with have a role somewhere in the driving of the transformation of the business, either because they're going to be changing the way in which they operate internally, or because they're bringing in some experience from working with a partner. The evidence is there, Deborah. Okay. And that's why all these guys are in the room today.
All right, but the question is, the evidence is there to us. because this is what we do. The question is, how does the evidence get up to those guys who are sitting at the top table when, quite frankly, most of us in this audience don't get to go anywhere near the top table?
Right. But to a degree they do. Polling questions yesterday, polling questions every event I've been to. What's the number one factor in success for transformation? Top table sponsorship.
But sponsorship and value are not the same thing.
But you can't do them separately. You have to be able to get beyond just the cost-saving thing in order to capture the attention. And the metrics that we're seeing and the ideas that are coming through in terms of driving top line as well as bottom line improvement is what's capturing that attention. You've seen it.
Do you think that shared services leaders belong at the top table?
At the top table, not necessarily. Around the top table, with access to the top table, yes. I'm not somebody for high, big, unwieldy management teams. Every person around the table has to have a specific role. But just pushing this thing down and hoping it will go away has never been successful. And that's when you get the issues.
So in other words, you're saying that the sponsorship is critical to getting to the top table, and that sponsor really needs to understand and advocate for the shared services leader. But ultimately, what the shared services leader really needs is a very good PR structure.
Karina said it in the last session. It's about communication. You know, I've been in this industry a long time. I don't like the word factory that was mentioned as a talent challenge. Actually, I don't hear it very often. Factory is not what's going to get the interest at the top table. The communication of the value from the shared services leader and the sponsor is where the interest will come.
Do you think that shared services leaders, and one of our previous panels talked about this in terms of becoming a CFO, do you think that shared services leaders eventually can get to the top table?
Yes. I think I respect both of the perspectives that David and Claudio brought. I think the key thing is to understand for each of the organizations you're talking about, what is the animal that's needed as the CFO for the day, for the strategic challenge. If it's for acquisitions, you may not get that from a shared services business, but if it's somebody who really understands how to make the numbers work in more of a traditional accounting fashion, there's no reason why that shouldn't be a possibility.
This I think is the nut for creating value. One of the challenges is you're talking about CFOs and making the numbers work. And if you think about the shared services operation is the most virtual, the most global, if it's a global shared services operation, and it should be the place that breeds new leaders. Not about numbers jockeys, it's about new capabilities that have nothing to do with
And it's not just about finance. If you look at all of the providers that are around and the options there are lots of different services which 10, 15 years ago were never even thought about. A lot of marketing, a lot of things coming out now of the digital changes. We're seeing that a lot now.
Next question for you. Let's turn to BPO providers because ultimately BPO providers are part of the value equation. What should BPO providers be doing to create value for their customers besides better, faster, and cheaper, silent running, and all that good stuff? Is it any different?
It is, and it's changed. I think a couple of things. First of all, it is absolutely vital that before you do all the exciting stuff, what you've contracted to do on the basic services has got to be done, because the noise that creates stops you getting anywhere near some of the new ideas. But you should expect, and the advantage of having a BPO provider is the experience they get from lots of other engagements. And that came out yesterday from some of the panel sessions here. People from BPO providers will bring you ideas from other industries. They'll also bring you ideas of things and give you counseling as to what will and will not work. So you should expect us to come with new ideas as to how to use technology better, but also from a commercial perspective. Most of the people who have transacted with us historically have done this on an FTE-based pricing model. I'm now talking to customers who, instead of looking at processes stacked up like this, are looking at customer journeys with outcomes. And that requires a very different approach to risk. And that, I think, is quite often forgotten when we talk about where value comes. It's about the ability to do some risk sharing as well.
One of the questions I would ask is not every organization can accept value from a shared services operation. What would you tell the audience about in terms of looking at their organizations to see whether any value can be created? Because no two organizations are the same. Some will accept value from any part of the organization. Some will say that unless you rank a certain way or you're located in a certain part of the world or whatever, you're allowed to create value. How does a shared service leader know that he's got a good environment to be able to create value?
Talk to other people in your industry. Talk to other shared service providers. There's benchmarking that you can get. You shouldn't just be focused internally on what you do. You should be looking for new ideas all the time. Karina brought this out just now. The industry is very easy to become lazy.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about benchmarking, because I think benchmarking is very good stuff. What I'm talking about is some organizations will not let you create value. Each organization has a separate ecosystem. How does a shared services leader know whether the organization will accept the value beyond better, faster, cheaper, or not? How do you know you belong there? Because I would imagine there are a number of people in the audience who have been in organizations that say they want to transform and do things differently, but ultimately it's about silent running and nothing else. How do you know that someone will let you create value?
And I've been there. When I started creating the shared service business for Royal Mail, it was about using the capacity to drive revenue improvement for the company. Then it changed. The company was under pressure. Don't want you to do that anymore, Mark. I want you to save cost. It's going to be communication with the top of the business. And not every business wants you to do that. I think you have to swallow a difficult pill sometimes.
But how do you know your management will let you create value? Are there certain markers in terms of events? Are there certain structures that say, yeah, shared services is going to be allowed to be something?
So you have to bring ideas, and you have to test those ideas, and you have to get a decision as to whether those ideas are going to be allowed to run. That's what's happened to me.
He's a very hopeful man.
Well,
I am always hopeful.
That's a great
it's an upbeat
note
thing.
to end on.
I'm a man in a loud shirt.
Okay, Mark.
Yes, he wants to talk, Mark.
Stay hopeful. Questions? Any shared service
I'm hopeful for
leaders
questions
out
too.
there? You're feeling pretty lonely. You can't get to the top table. What are you in the job for?
Right here.
Yes, please.
Anne Duncan from Lumio Consulting. You know, I want to go back to what Greg Nugent said at the beginning, which is one of the things at the top table. It's about making your company be loved by your customers, by the communities in which you operate. It's about extending the license to operate wherever you are. It's about growth in emerging markets and all the other places. One of the things about shared services in general and about outsourcing in general is that it serves as the education base for many of these emerging countries where it really is where the top competencies and skills get developed, and then people leave, the turnover that's obvious in these areas. They go and leave to populate other fields and other business industries, other sectors. And I think that's one of the things that nobody seems to sort of look out of the box and say, this is actually an industry that is creating capabilities. That makes companies loved. That's what the top table cares about when they go to Davos. It's the other things that are beyond just the sort of putting my nose down and look straight at the table at what the numbers are. It's about how do I get the company to be loved the way the Olympics got loved by all the Britons.
You know, it's funny. I love the aspiration, but I think that you may be about 10 years early. I think one of the best things shared services operations do is that they are change agents, and I think we talk about change management, but we forget that we're change agents and change management are not the same thing. That's number one. But where else do you learn how to work virtually in an organization like you do, and cross-culturally like you do in a very large shared services operation or a global shared services operation? In fact, for those of you who remember old banking days, do you remember when banks had management training organizations?
Yeah.
Where you went through and you learned all sorts of things and you picked up real capabilities, not just competency, but capabilities. I think shared services really, it can be the lab for very strong middle management if we think about that in that way.
And I think you make a great point that we overlook. I've been to India 40 odd times, I've been to the Philippines, I've been all over the place. It's very easy for us to sit in our London offices and judge what people do in those centres by the standards of things our graduates in the UK would do. There are a lot of things that happen in shared service centres overseas that our guys wouldn't touch. There's a whole career path for people here. If you've been over and you've gone into many of these centres, look at the pride with which people work. Look at their aspiration for quality and the delivery that they want to produce. There's a big leadership thing here, but let's not just judge it by our own London Western standards. That gets missed. I think you make a great point there.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful question, good answers. Mark and Deborah, thank you very much.